Okay, so this will be bonus video number 1. Okay, so in the Google Drive link that you got from staff, there's a few other files in addition to just the license file that you'll find in the folder. Now, there's a couple of these that I want us to take a look at. There's a bunch of files in here titled MA6 underscore fiducial underscore cross something something something. These are alignment marks that we recommend people use for the MA6 mask aligner if you need to do multi-level lithography. So let's go ahead and take a look inside of each of these right now. Now, these files are basically the same file, just designed in slightly different ways. So first, let's go ahead and take a look at this MA6 fiducial cross DF. Let's take a look at that and see what that's all about. Okay, so these are alignment marks that we suggest that you use for the MA6. If you look inside here, you see wafer 4-inch underscore cross DF. So these are alignment marks that we recommend for 4-inch wafers. And there's also a 3-inch wafer version, which is basically the same alignment marks, just pulled in a little bit for 3-inch wafers. And you'll see here that there's this cell here, single cross DF. So this is an alignment. This is one of our alignment marks here. Okay, so you'll see here that we've got our pattern in 2 different layers. If I zoom in here, this is really what we want to look at. We have a cross here in the middle, and we'll call this a window around the outside of it. And let's take a look at each of these layers. So right now layer 1 is highlighted, and layer 2 is also there. I'm going to hide layer 2. Okay, so here what you're looking at is the cross in layer 1. And so the idea behind these alignment marks is that you're going to want to get the cross to show up on your wafer. Now whether the cross should be bright field or dark field, that's for you to decide. And if you're not sure which version to use, you can always ask us staff. So if I look at this alignment mark here, this file is called cross DF, which for cross dark field. So this is the dark field version of the cross, meaning that most of the area would not end up transparent on the mask. So here, everywhere that you see that has some kind of polygon, this will end up transparent on the mask. So this would have this little cross here transparent, and then everywhere that you see black would not let the light through on the mask. So this would print a dark field cross, a cross in dark field, onto the mask. You'll also see half of some vernier marks here. I'll explain that in a moment. Okay, so in general, we're going to want... sorry, technical difficulties. There we go. Okay. So in general, we're going to want to have the window in bright field basically always, because the way this works is that you get the cross to line up inside of the window. So you'll want to be able to see the cross through the window pretty much in every case. So that's a single cross. And also down here, you'll notice we have these funny looking marks here. Now these marks are referred to, this is sort of a classic alignment mark that people use for measuring alignments and how well the tool actually aligned the sample to the mask. So let's take a look at the X direction here. Basically, there's a set of these in the Y direction, which follows the exact same idea. Okay, so here you'll see that there's sort of a cutout in the second layer, and then there's also in the first layer some of these marks here. And this is designed so that if the wafer is perfectly aligned, if the alignment between the 2 layers that you've printed on your sample are perfectly aligned, these 2 alignment marks, or these 2 vernier marks here in the middle, would line up perfectly. If the wafer is shifted to the left by 1 micron, then this mark here would line up with this mark here. If the wafer shifted to the left 2 microns, this mark here would line up with this mark here, and so on and so on. And so if the wafer was shifted to the right by 1 micron, this mark would line up with this mark. If it was shifted by 2 microns, this mark would line up with this mark, and so on and so on. So you can get a nice, quick, easy visual representation of the X and Y alignment when you print this on your wafer. So that's the dark field version of these alignment marks. Oops, sorry. Okay. Now let's take a look at the bright field version. So I was looking at the cross dark field. Let's look at the cross bright field. Okay, so this is the bright field version. Again, you have 4-inch wafer cross bright field, 3-inch wafer cross bright field. It's the same idea. Now, this bright field version of the cross, or of the alignment marks, is designed the exact same way as the dark field version, except the tone is inverted on the cross. So here, we would be exposing, we would have the mask to be transparent everywhere around this cross instead of only the cross. So it's the tone of, we say that the tone of that is reversed versus the other file that I showed you. And it also has these vernier marks, just like the other one does, just in the appropriate tone. And layer 2 is the exact same as layer 2 on the dark field version. Oops, there we go. It's the exact same. Okay? And so it's up to you in sort of thinking through your process. You have to decide which version you'd like to use, because it'll have a serious impact on your process. Okay. Now, let's take a look at the small version. So we looked at cross DF, and there's also cross DF small. Let's take a look at that one. Now, this is actually designed the same way as the other dark field crosses that we saw, the other dark field alignment mark file that we looked at. But you'll see that the area that we have, the area of the real estate that this is going to take up on the wafer is a lot less. These marks will be a little bit harder to find on your way, or this will be a little bit harder to find when you go to use these on the mask aligner, but they take up less space. So it's again, that's another decision that you can make. It has the verniers, it has the cross, it has everything else. It's just a small. The small version is just a smaller area versus the full version. And now we also have these two files as well, cross DF, cross BF. There's also a BSA version, stands for backside alignment. So if you're going to align an exposure, if you're going to process one side of the wafer and then flip it over and process the other side of the wafer, these alignment marks can be used for that too, or this version. You'll notice that really the main difference between this version and the other versions that we saw was that you have to put the alignment marks in a certain place. This what you're seeing is layer 0 here, this kind of red silhouette. This is actually it's just a little visual representation of the chuck, of the chuck that we have for the tool. And so these little windows here that I'm showing you here, these are the holes in the backside of the chuck that have that you can use to look through the camera. So then we can basically put these alignment marks anywhere inside of these rectangles here. Now, if you're going to do backside alignment, especially if you're going to do backside alignment, I would strongly encourage you to ask staff, because then staff, you might want a little bit of extra training on the tool from staff, and also to have us take a second look at your design to make sure that it's okay to go and that things are going to work when you actually make your masks. So that's a little bit about that. So if you're going to use these fiducials, GDS